Welcome everyone to hashtag Peace Talks, and I want to also say Happy International Peace Day. I'm John with Peace Direct. So if you haven't been to a Peace Talks before, hashtag Peace Talks is a series of events featuring heroic peace builders, sharing stories of hope and empowering people to activate in their own communities. So we're so happy today to be joined by the Reverend Delonte Gholston, Senior Pastor of Peace Fellowship Church in Washington, D.C. So to give you a little bit of an overview around Peace Direct, we work with local people to stop violent conflict and build lasting peace. For more than 15 years, working with peace-building partners in some of the most difficult conflicts around the world, from Somalia to Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Syria, and Yemen, places where ongoing wars have ripped communities apart and where local people are working every day to rebuild the peace. I want to give a big thanks to our partners for tonight, co-sponsors, Eaton Workshop and Plus Peace. And now I'd like to introduce you to our colleague and our sponsor for tonight, Sebi. I'm sorry, is Sebi here? I don't think he is. Monica, take it away.
All right. Hello, all. I hope everybody's doing great. I am the interim director. I'm going to take off this background. Here we go. I'm the interim director of Plus Peace, and we are really excited to share stories of hope, these peace talks with Peace Direct. We have a really great partnership with Peace Direct, and not only as a member, but just really as colleagues and co-conspirators for peace. We are tonight not only hosting, Pastor Delonte is a really good friend of mine, and also I'm really, really excited and pumped for you all to hear from him and the amazing work they're doing with the DC Peace teams. But we are on Twitter. You have to use Twitter, and you have to hashtag Peace Talks and tag Peace Direct or Plus Peace. We're going to be asking the question, who gives you hope? We're going to be listening to Pastor Jelante as he gives us hope for peace here in DC. Tell us the name of the person that gives you hope with hashtag Peace Talks, Peace Direct, or Plus Peace. And you're going to get our swag. We got 3 posters going. We got some postcards, and we got stickers. And so you're going to get a swag bag of all of that from Plus Peace when you answer that question, who gives you hope? Just tell us the first name or the person that gives you hope. Hashtag Peace Talks, and happy Peace Day. Thank you so much for letting us be part of this, guys.
Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. So I just want to let you know, so everybody that's live streaming will be taking audience questions from the chat box via Zoom, and also Peace Direct, Plus Peace, and Eden Workshops Facebook live streams and YouTube channels. And we want to let you know that this hashtag Peace Talks will be archived via Peace Direct's YouTube channel. And we're going to share the video link with you afterwards for those that couldn't join us today. Now for some background around our featured speaker. So we're pleased to have Pastor Jelante Gholston, Senior Pastor of the Peace Fellowship Church, which is located in the historic neighborhood of Deanwood in Washington, D.C. He was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and was educated in D.C. public schools, Swarthmore College, Georgetown University, and Fuller Theological Seminary. Raised in the National Baptist Church as a teacher, preacher, and musician, his passion for advocacy and development has always been deeply rooted in his faith. It has led him to serve as part of church renewal and planning movements in DC and LA. Delonte is committed to using his passion for art, theology, and social change to bring life and flourishing both to cities and to rural areas. This passion fueled his work with the downtown LA Clergy Council, where he served as the director of the Trust Talks, a community transformation initiative between the LAPD and key stakeholders in downtown LA. It has also led him to provide leadership in community development and social change work in the Appalachian Hills of West Virginia and in rural and urban Malawi and South Africa. He was married in October 2016 to his life partner and best friend, Claire Wiggins. Executive Director of the U.S. for Peace Direct, Bridget Moix, will be moderating tonight's talk. Now I'd like to welcome Pastor Gholston and Bridget.
Thanks so much. Thanks, John, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Monica, for everything you're doing, all the organizing with Plus Peace, all the organizing in your life, and for connecting us with Pastor Delonte. And Pastor Delonte, thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening to talk with us and have this conversation. You know, I know that as a pastor, your time is precious and you're on 24/7 and your community is dealing with a lot right now. So thank you so much for what you're doing and for being here with us. I just want to kick off this conversation really asking you a little bit about your own journey. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've ended up doing everything that you've done? Your bio is really amazing. The work you've done in the US and different places internationally. How did you come to where you are now with the DC Peace Fellowship Church?
Well, thanks. Thanks so much, Bridget. I want to thank Peace Directs, my sister Monica. I want to thank Eaton and all the different partners and friends. I see some friends that somebody mentioned my name. Was that Reverend Joanna? Bless you, my sister. Yes, it's just it's good to be with you all this evening. I think we were talking earlier, right before this call, about how the work that we do at Peace Fellowship Church and the work that we do with Peace Walks DC is not work that I was really itching to do. Like so many people, the call to do work around prevention, violence prevention and intervention, the call to work against state violence and intracommunity violence, it comes out of a deep place of pain. It doesn't come out of a place of, trying to get the glow up or trying to be something or do something. When I was in seminary, you mentioned in my bio that I attended seminary out in California at Fuller Seminary. Where you are when you're in seminary, when you're studying something is what shapes you most, right? And so it just so happens that when I was in seminary is when Trayvon Martin was killed. It's when Mike Brown was killed. It's when Freddie Gray was killed in police custody. These are the things that were happening at a time when I'm trying to figure out my call and how to follow God and how to be a pastor, how to show up in the community, these things. And so it led me out to the streets. I remember the first protest that a few of us went to, a few of the Black students at Fuller Seminary, we went to downtown LA to protest when Trayvon Martin was killed. And I just remember asking myself, where's the church in this? Where are people who profess the name of Jesus? Where are the people who believe in this radical, who loved his enemies, who ate with people he didn't have any business eating with, who was himself an innocent man who was killed and crucified by a corrupt empire, corrupt state? Where are the people who bear that name? And I saw some, but honestly, I didn't resonate with them. It seemed like they were just there for a camera or there for a bullhorn or there for an opportunity or a press op or something like that. And so I sort of just kind of leaning into relationship and showing up at BLM spaces, protests, and just leaning into a relationship with folk in the movement in LA, and realizing and recognizing that the families that were most impacted by state violence in LA and the organizers who were doing the work, they were our people. These were people that grew up in the church. These are people that did not see the prophetic witness and the prophetic power and passion from the civil rights and Black Power movement of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They didn't see that mantle of leadership in the church. And so I over time, through developing relationships and just a ministry of presence, really just showing up, myself and a few other pastors, Pastor Eddie Anderson, Pastor Q, Jan Marie, and others in LA, we just decided, we're just going to be present, and that work led to some peace building work you talked about, in some of the work that we did with between LAPD and activists, people who were unhoused, people who were from the DA's office. We were really trying to basically get crowdsourced, community-based solutions to problems with policing in downtown LA, where we had a lot of people who were unhoused and were being abused, people who were having mental health episodes, but they would send they would send the police, and they would end up being harassed. And so we were trying to create tables and spaces for facilitated, structured conversations where we talk about some of the issues, but also really talk about solutions. And we brought in UCLA students and USC students to kind of document those talks. We held over the course of 3 years, we held about 10 different sessions with about 150 to 60 people in each session. And we called that sort of raw ethnographic data, if you will, and began to push that at the city council. And it led to some legislation that we worked on in a coalition with LA Can, with the Los Angeles Community Action Network, with Black Lives Matter LA, with the Community Coalition in LA, with LA Voice, used to be called PICO, LA Faith in Action is what it's called now. And we just worked to try to push a reform and a transformation agenda around policing. And that's what I thought I was going to be doing. I was doing that work in LA, and got a call one day that Peace Fellowship Church was looking to hire a pastor. And I was like, oh, that's great. I heard about that church, and hope they find one. God bless them, and if I know anybody, I'll let them know. And in fact, I knew somebody, and I let him know. I let a brother of mine know. He was actually applying. I was like, oh, great, you're applying, boom. And long story short, I ended up talking to my wife, talked to my family, and we said, well, what's the worst thing that could happen if I throw my hat in the ring? Who knows? Never thought about coming back to DC in this season of my life. My parents are here. I thought maybe, when they're in their maybe late 70s or 80s or something like that, that might be a good time to sort of make that transition back to the DC area. But the brother who I asked actually about applying to this position ended up turning around, looking me in the face, and was like, Pastor D, you need to apply. That's your city. You know it better than anybody else. I have an interview with them next week, but I actually think you need to apply for this position. This brother started encouraging me to apply for the position that I was trying to get him to apply for. And so, God works in mysterious ways. We accepted a call here at the end of 2017. I did our candidacy sermon the week of Charlottesville. And it was just one of those things where I was like, wow, okay, this, is it possible, God, that you're leading me back to this area because of the way, the specific and profound ways that this beast of white supremacy is pressing down on our people in this part of the country. And then the church is also located a block away from where one of my good friends and brothers, Olu Williams, was shot and killed. And so when I pulled up on the block where the church is located, we worship in a school, and I was like, hold up, I know this block. And so I had to quickly process all of this, because I was in LA when he was killed, and I couldn't make it back to the funeral. It was all these different emotions. We led a Bible study together, Olu and I, and somebody followed him home from the Deanwood Metro station, tried to rob him, and murdered him, shot him in the chest with a double gauge shotgun. And I just had this strong sense that God was calling me in a very clear way to deal with this intersection of sort of white supremacist violence and the associated intra-community violence, where oppressed people, because of the system of oppression that we live in, then begin to internalize those messages and those values. And that plus poverty and is like kerosene for forest fire. And so we moved back here at the end of October, November of 17. And then my nephew was actually shot in December of that year. Barely survived. He was shot 5 times, 16 years old. Nobody wants to get that phone call. Nobody wants to be in that hospital room waiting to see whether or not your nephew, your 16-year-old nephew, the kid that you helped to raise, the kid that you threw football around with, the kid that you taught how to do pull-ups, that you're waiting to see whether or not he's going to make it. And so I guess I say to you that this work is it's nothing that I wanted to do. When my nephew got shot, I found out that my father had been shot. My father opened up about his own experience, and so I didn't have a choice but to do something. And so when there was a triple homicide at the beginning of that following year in our community in January of 2018, I just started calling pastors. I just started calling pastors, calling people in the city, calling organizers that I knew, and said, "Y'all, what's being done on the ground to deal with this issue of violence? Who's really serious about this in the faith community?" And a group of pastors, we got together and we said, I know what has been done in Boston. I had done some research around the work that Jeffrey Brown had done with Eugene Rivers around what's called the Boston Miracle. I knew some of what had been done in Oakland, where Pastor Ben McBride and Mike McBride and others, Pastor, I think his name is Donnell, a variety of different pastors in the Bay Area have been really working together to hit the streets. And so I said, well, why isn't there something like that here in DC? Who are the pastors that are doing that? And so, so, right, Pastor Donnell Jones, exactly. Yeah, Monica knows. And we just wanted to try to, amplify their work and build on their work and also build on the work of clergy who have been doing good work here in DC, pastors like Donald Isaac, pastors like Reverend Anthony Motley, Reverend Tony Lee. These are folks that in the 80s and 90s, when I was a kid, were out in the streets. They were doing walks from 9 at night till 2 in the morning. But they're in their 50s, 60s now. So they're working in a different way now. And it was up to kind of a different sort of a Joshua generation, a new generation who's willing to still get out there and do that work. And so we just started getting out, just walking neighborhoods. We met with different folks in the city. We have an Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement that helped us identify different key hotspots, key areas. And we just started focusing on those areas and building relationships and asking people questions and showing up over and over and over again so that people knew that this was not a one-off, this was not a project, but that this is about us, saving us from both state violence and intercommunity violence. So it's nothing that we've gotten right. It's nothing that we're doing perfectly, but we just refuse to become the people or the beast that we're fighting against. We want to see shooters and survivors be able to see each other as human beings in the same way that when I was working in LAPD to find some kind of common ground between, I hate that phrase common ground, but some kind of a way to humanize police officers and a way to humanize activists, a way to see that people in wicked systems need to be saved from wicked systems. In that same way, I'm trying to, we as the team are trying to figure out how do we help people in wicked systems be saved from those systems, and reimagining what community can look like, reimagining what safety can look like, reimagining what justice can look like. So Wow, that was a kind of a long answer to your question, but that's kind of how I got here. It's because a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and because of the real folks who were doing the work on the ground that inspired me to get involved.
Thank you so much. I've got like 15 different questions I want to follow up with on you, but first I just want to say thank you for opening up and sharing with us. You know, as a white woman who's had a lot of privilege and had it pretty easy in my life, you know, I'm very conscious that I can't imagine what you and your community has been going through. And so I'm sorry for those direct losses you shared with us and everything that's been going on. And also just thank you for being open and for doing this work. I think, you know, what we hear from local peace builders in other countries too is that a lot of people don't expect the path that they're brought onto, and they end up saying just exactly what you said, which is, I didn't have a choice. My community needed me, my community called to me, and I didn't have a choice, but it is a choice. And so, you know, we're so thankful, grateful, blessed that you're here back in DC working here, and for all the work that you've done everywhere. So just thank you so much for all of that. And I just want to pick up on kind of the work that you're doing now there in Deanwood and with this community. You know, what's going on now? We've had COVID. We've had the revelation of how much structural racism is built into our system. We have an uprising, certainly. We have everything going on in national politics and elections coming up. What's going on with your community right now? And what are the most important things that you want, other people to know about?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would want folks to know is that we're a resilient community. Deanwood, Marshall Heights, Capitol View, Anacostia, Congress Heights. These are communities, Washington Highlands. These are communities that have endured. I mean, this is hell that we're going through. I've lost colleagues due to COVID. I've had members who've lost their mom and their brother within the same week. We, in our circle among pastors, I was meeting with some pastors just last week in preparation for another service that I have to do of a young man that was killed by the MPD, the family of Deon K. And I was talking to some pastors, and we were just, saying, how many homicide funerals have you done? And we were just like, man, I've lost count. I've lost count for this year. And it was just one of those things where I was just aware that, yes, we are an incredibly resilient community, but we are a community we're in the middle of a war zone. We're in the middle of spiritual warfare. We are in, when it flooded 2 weeks ago, it was our community that was the most impacted by the flooding, the pandemic. Our community is most impacted by the pandemic. And Ward 7 and Ward 8 in our city, we lead the city, and we happen to lead the city in gun violence. In our city, we've had already this year, we've had over 140 people to be shot and killed due to gun violence. And that's up almost 50% from last year, which is something that we knew was going to happen, and an area that we really wanted to make sure that we focused on and organized around. There have been already 630 people shot, not in non-fatal shootings. So that's 630 families, often the same family. I'm dealing with a family right now. I did their eulogy for their son this time last year, and now it's their cousin that we're having to eulogize this week. So you have the same families being re-traumatized over and over and over again, because the reality is that the pain is not shared equally in our city. The pain is not equally distributed. The pain in our community as it relates to gun violence is it's focused and concentrated in the poorest, the blackest, the brownest areas of our city in Ward 7 and Ward 8. And so what I would want folks to know is that we take that very seriously as a community, as a resilient community, as a community that believes that the solutions that we need are found right here in our communities. We've been organizing. We haven't stopped organizing. So what that looks like for us is unfortunately, we had a huge mass shooting, the biggest mass shooting in DC history, in the Greenway area off of Minnesota Avenue and 32nd and Du Bois Street over in Southeast. And when that happened, there were, over 40 people who were shot in that one incident, and one fatality, young brother, 17-year-old named Christopher Brown. And we decided that we needed to start organizing more intensely, because honestly, COVID threw everything off. In fact, the weekend that COVID started was the weekend that we were starting our trainings for the upcoming season of Peace Walks. That was the Saturday, it was March, I think it was the 16th of March or the 17th of March. It was that weekend that everything got shut down, was when we were starting our trainings. And so it was like, what are we, going to do? And so it took us some time to find a new rhythm. But for the last 3 months or so, we've been meeting every Friday with all of our partners, with the Alliance of Concerned Men, with the 30 some odd churches that we're organizing, with the Missionary Baptists, with our Pentecostal partners, with even some of the national organizations, March for Our Lives and Moms Demand Action, the Brady organization. Even they have been looking to figure out how to amplify local work. And so it's been good. Our partners with the Trigger Project and our partners with the Center for Equity and so many different teams. We've been meeting on Fridays to get work done and to organize peace walks. Monica went out with us on one of our walks as well to help us do kind of an artivist engagement, which is something that we like to do. Whenever we go into a community, we like to always have music or have a visual art for the kids, or fry some fish, so that we're not just in a community, just talking about gun violence or do you need because we always try to go with partners. We try to go with somebody from the Department of Employment Services. We try to go with somebody from Department of Behavioral Health. We try to always go with somebody from the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, because they have a Pathways program that works with formerly incarcerated young people to put them in a cohort for 3 months and then give them job opportunities. So we always try to make sure that we're having a holistic sort of approach when we engage. But, now that this means that we, instead of having 40 people go out on a walk, we have maybe 10 to 15, and we're, wearing masks, and we're trying to be as socially distanced. And instead of handing out, maybe we're not doing fish fries. Now we're handing out hand sanitizer and masks when we go out. So it looks different these days. But I guess I would say that the most important thing for us is to know that we're resilient folks, but we take the wounds. Jeremiah chapter 8. I'm a pastor, right? So all of what I do is centered in the sacred. Everything I do, I try to center it in the sacred. And there's a passage in the Hebrew Bible, in the book of Jeremiah. He's a prophet, and chapter 8 says, God tells Jeremiah to tell the people that you've treated my wounds as though they were not serious, and ask the question, is there a balm in Gilead? Is there a physician there? Is there anyone who can heal these deep wounds? And what I tell people a lot of times is that we have to always recognize that deep wounds require deep healing, that deep wounds in our community, they require deep healing. And it's got to be holistic. It's got to focus on all of the social determinants of violence, of housing, of mental health, of education, of employment, of entrepreneurship training. It's gotta focus on food insecurity. Peacemaking in our community is not just talking to a shooter or to a survivor who might be a potential shooter next week, but it's about making sure that those basic needs are met, making sure that people have dignity and are treated with respect, and have a hope. Taking seriously that the deep wounds that our people have, they require deep healing. And so we're trying to do that work at that intersection of state violence and of inter-community violence, recognizing that our people are over-policed, and our people are redlined, right? And our people are food insecure, and our people are often working dead-end jobs. And progressive liberals put our people in these zoos called public housing projects because they thought that was a good idea to put everybody, who's struggling with the same things in the exact same housing, right? Thank you, white liberals. We appreciate you. And so we're having to deal with all of these wounds, and so we have to remake a new future. We have to reimagine and remake a new future that treats those wounds seriously, but that says yes to that question: is there a bomb? The answer is yes. There is a bomb, and it's you. There is a bomb. It's me. There is a bomb. It's us. Working together. And I can say more about that, but those are the main things that come to mind.
Wow, thank you, Pastor Jelante. And I want to make sure that we put in the chat box the website, your link to your website, because of so much work that you're doing, a lot of things going on, the peace walks that you mentioned, but a lot of other work and a lot of great sermons and a lot of inspiration for people. So we want to share the link to your website. And also is there a particular GoFundMe campaign you mentioned to me that you want to call out for folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website for the church is just peacefellowshipchurch.org. Since we've been virtual, a lot of our sermons are now online on our Facebook page, which is Peace Fellowship Church on Facebook. You can certainly follow Peace Walks DC on Instagram and Facebook at Peace Walks DC. Those are the places where you can follow our work in that realm. I did mention that our church is supporting the family of Delonte, a young 18-year-old young man whose life was taken just a couple of weeks ago. His services are going to be this coming Thursday, and we're trying to be a blessing to that family to make sure that everything is being covered. Some of us are also trying to work with that family on relocation because it's just been so difficult for that family. And so, there is a GoFundMe link that if somebody can pull that up, that'd be great. It's just the official Delonte GoFundMe. It definitely want to send folks there to support and bless his mother, his sister, his family in his tragic and unnecessary death at the hands of the Metropolitan Police Department. I do serve on the Police Reform Commission in DC, and we have called for a independent investigation of his shooting, and are working to do all we can to transform the police department in the city.
Great. So those links are in the chat box if you're on the Zoom, and I think we're pushing them out other ways as well if you're watching online. I just wanted to pick up on something you said and dig in a little deeper too. You said that you're working you want people to refuse to become the beast that we're fighting against. And that's part of the peace ministry that you're doing. And I just want to ask, we're in the midst of all the discussions around certainly police reform, but also structural racism in the US, truth and reconciliation in the US, justice for people of color. What do you see this path to reconciliation, to justice, to a beloved community in the U.S., to this new community? You said it's me, it's you, it's us. How do we get there? What do you see as the path forward?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. I really owe a lot of what I think about peacemaking to my mentor, Reverend James Lawson, who was the architect of the Memphis sit-ins and Memphis boycott, the Selma sit-ins, the Selma's boycott, the Albany sit-ins and boycott. And he's one of these unsung heroes of the civil rights movement, who, along with C.T. Vivian and John Lewis and Diane Nash and Ella Jo Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer, so many, Bayard Russ, so many people, they really believed in the truth of nonviolent resistance. And what Reverend Lawson will often say is that we're fighting not only for freedom for ourselves, but we're also fighting for freedom from and transformation for our oppressors. And I don't like that. To be honest with you, I have a lot of days where I'm not interested in the transformation of my oppressors. I'm most interested in the transformation of my community and the healing of the centuries of violence and systemic oppression that has been meted out on my community. I often am so busy trying to deal with the wreckage of it all that I often feel like I don't have time to also educate and lead and seek the salvation of and liberation of white people too, or people who James Baldwin say, people who think themselves to be white. And so I do struggle. I want to just be honest that I do struggle. But as a pastor of a multicultural congregation, I have white people in my congregation. I have Navajo, indigenous folk in my congregation. I have AAP, Asian American Pacific Islander folk. I have queer folk. I have a lot of Black folk in DC. But we're in every we're in everything congregation. And so I find myself being convicted about what it means to set everybody free, because the truth is that the trauma is that you can't inflict the amount of pain that white supremacists and their friends and allies have done on minority people, on the bodies of Black people. You can't inflict that level of pain without also causing a level of trauma on yourself. It's one of the reasons why white folks have such a hard time talking about racism, is because there is an unwillingness to face the full measure and depth of just how much trauma you have inflicted, your people have inflicted on me, my community, my people. And so that's true not only for white people, but also white adjacent people, Jewish people, and white aspiring Black people, white aspiring Asian people, white aspiring Latinx people, people who wanted to have that identity. And so I would say, I'm struggling with your question, honestly, but I would say that what the way forward looks like is I would come back to Jeremiah 8. Treat the wounds seriously. Treat the wounds as though they're serious. And so, what is Zacchaeus in the Bible? Jesus had an interaction with Zacchaeus, who was a man who was responsible for swindling people as a tax collector. In the Jewish custom, a tax collector is somebody who's taking money from their own people, and he had to give up over a fourth of what he had stolen in order to be made right with God. What does the Bible teach us in the book of Acts? That in Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 4, when there was nobody who was in need among them, is what the scripture says, because people laid down they mortgaged what their property, so that nobody, so that widows and orphans and the seniors and kids, nobody was in need among them, because people were willing to radically give from what they had. And so I think that Randall Robinson is somebody that I've respected for a number of years when he wrote his book, The Debt. Before everybody else was talking about reparations in this country, Randall Robinson was talking about it. He got fed up with it when Bill Clinton bombed Somalia as a way to distract from his situation with Monica Lewinsky, because yet again, you have a white progressive using Black bodies as a distraction from your own indiscretion. So he left. He and his wife, they left. They pulled a James Baldwin. They pulled a Tina Turner. They left and went to the islands or whatever. But I would say that the way forward, it looks like white people in this country taking seriously the debt that is owed to Black people. I mean, point blank. I mean, if people want to believe in healing and wholeness, talking about it until we're blue in the face is not going to get us there. Conversations. Look, I trained facilitators, and when we were doing our work with the Trust Talks and with LAPD and all, and I believe in that work. I've been doing dialogue since I was in high school, peer facilitation, conflict study, all that type of stuff, conflict transformation, all that. That's all fine work. That's good work. Okay, now I believe in it. I believe in it to the extent that we're showing up as equals at the table. And the reality is that in the American context, we are not showing up as equals at the table. The table, we try to treat the table as though it's an even table when a whole bunch of legs are missing, and they missing on my side of the table. And so we don't have dialogue until the work is done to repair the broken part of this table. And quite frankly, the table that we keep trying to sit at might need to be turned over and broken up and reconfigured and transformed into a new table that's actually big enough for all of us. And so if we are going to have a truly beloved community where everybody is sacred, where everybody has a place, then it has to be a table that's big enough for everybody's pain, right? It has to be big enough for the pain that, quite frankly, white folks have about being called out on their racism. That pain needs to have a place at the table. But as a part of responding to that pain, there also has to be responsibility for what has been done, right? Yeah, it's going to hurt. It hurts, right? But let's not treat the wounds as though they are not serious wounds, right? And so a true table of beloved community is one at which people who have been oppressed and marginalized their pain is centered, and that the fragility or the difficulty of people who are in power having to have those conversations, their pain is understood, their pain is recognized, but their pain is not centered until the work that must be done to repair what has been damaged is actually done. Then we can have a conversation about, oh man, that sure was hard for you to do. Then we can maybe, then we can talk about, what are the steps that we might need to take together to actually become deeper friends and have a deeper relationship now that you've done the bare minimum of what needs to be done. So in my tradition, the sins of the whole world were atoned for. This is a Judeo-Christian tradition. The sins of the whole world were atoned for because of a sacrifice, a bodily sacrifice. So I don't come to this thinking that that the work of reconciliation, first of all, I don't even know what reconciliation is, because reconciliation assumes that we were good to begin with. So it's more like recreation than the reconciliation. And so that work is good. That new earth, that new heaven, that new relationship, it won't be formed on good ground unless that's ground that's been tilled and watered with the seeds of redemption, of repentance, of making what's wrong right, and being okay with saying it's wrong, and being okay with saying I need to do all that I must do to make a deep wound whole again.
Well, you sure had a good answer for something you said you were struggling with and didn't know what the answer was. Thank you. I think it's pretty both historic and important and well long overdue that reparations is back on the table, at least in the public debate. And so I think you're exactly right that there's certain steps before you get to the reconciliation part, and the recreation idea I think is a really a better framing maybe of it for our country. One of the things that, just to get confessional with you as a pastor, I think the peacebuilding community, those of us who work in these organizations that have been saying we do peacebuilding and that have been focused in a lot of places in the world that need a lot of support and a lot of peacebuilding work, amazing peacebuilding work going on. We've been focused in other places, and we've been called back now to really look at, well, what does this mean? Am I attentive to what's going on in DC? Am I active as a peacebuilder here? Am I active as a white progressive in this country, calling myself to account? And, the peacebuilding community, I think now is really starting to grapple with, how do we make real this commitment? If we say we have a commitment to supporting those and supporting those most impacted by violence and oppression, wherever they are in the world, to lead the future and to lead the solutions for their communities, then how are we really going to do that? So I just want to say thank you, because I think there's a lot of work that we've got to do in our places, in our spaces, and I want us, to really figure out how do we support each other? How do we build together, and how do we take responsibility for all of us?
I appreciate you saying that, my sister, and I'll hold you that, because I don't get it. I've been watching it, like I said, I went to Swarthmore, and I've been in the progressive spaces, and I've been in the evangelical spaces, and in both of those spaces, I see the same missionary impulse to go somewhere else to deal with the problem that folks aren't willing to face right here at home. I've seen folks, give millions of dollars to fight, to end child soldiers in the Congo, when you have the exact same circumstances and situations. We literally had child soldiers down the street who, they don't want to have to pick up a gun, but they feel like that's the only choice that they have, right? And so yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. We need to learn how to do the harder work of going next door, going down the street and making peace. And it's both and. It's the both and. I'm not saying that it's an either or. I'm just saying we need to do better at the both and.
Yeah, I agree. So I know we got a few questions, and I want to make sure people have questions. But before we turn to the audience, we always want to ask, remarkable peacebuilders on the front lines of the most difficult situations. What inspires you? What gives you hope? Where do you find hope, for yourself, for your community right now?
Oh, wow. I constantly draw hope from my family. We just had a newborn. Excuse me. We have a 7-week-old. I have a 2-year-old. And there's just something about the tenderness of a child, the innocence of a child, that reminds me that all the death that I see on a regular basis, all of the oppression I see, that there's still new stuff happening. There's still new things being born. There's still another generation that's being born, that if we do what we really should do, we're gonna leave this world better for them. And I think that gives me a lot of hope. I just barely made the cut to be a millennial, but I would say Z and younger millennials than me, even, they give me a lot of hope, because I feel like we're in good hands. To see so many allies and comrades over the summer really come out and start taking these conversations seriously, that gives me hope. People who call me and and respect me enough to call me out when I'm wrong. That gives me hope. Because that shows me that we're becoming one family, one community that's accountable to each other. I mean, I know we don't have much time, so I'm not gonna go much longer than that. But I appreciate the question, and that's something I will continue to meditate on.
That's great. That's great. I have two kids too. They're a little bit older, two boys, 9 and 12, and I'll say I always say in my bio that they challenge my peacemaking skills every day of my life, but also they certainly give me hope. And I when my first son was born, I thought, it may not matter anything else I do in this world, but if I can raise a good human being, if I actually have been given the opportunity and the responsibility to play a role in that, wow, that's the best peace building I could do. So and you're in the thick of it, a 2-year-old and a newborn. My gosh, how are you managing a whole hour away from your family and pastoring a community right now? It's amazing. So
by God's grace.
Yeah.
Yes. With an amazing partner, and with amazing partners in our church as well. I see one of our members here. I think Leslie Page. I think that's our Leslie, and I'm not sure if Carolyn is also. Hi, y'all. I just want to say hi.
Yeah. So let's go to the audience, because we really want to get a few questions in from others. I could talk to you all night, Pastor Delonte, but let me turn it over and see if there are some questions, John, that we've received. You can put questions in the chat box, or if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can type them in the comments.
Yeah, Pastor Jelante, I wish we had 3 hours right now. We have so many questions coming in, but I'll start with the first question. So how have white churches / groups shown up? And how can / should white folks in DC show up?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, thanks. As I said, our church is a multicultural church. So we have white folks in our church that show up on a regular basis. And what we did was we organized what we call, for our peace walks, we also organized peace partners. And our peace partners are our white family, our white allies that are willing to take this work seriously. And so while we were walking for 7 months last year, they were training. They were looking specifically at anti-racist materials. We put them through a Bible study around, as a Christian, how do we show up against systems of oppression? And so that was one way that we asked folks in our own congregation to engage. And then we kind of put them to work around supporting the work. So there's always, there's always food when we go out. There's always bottled waters when we go out. They make sure that our T-shirts are ordered. They make sure that we can fundraise to. Right before the pandemic, we were really gearing up our fundraising to actually hire another organizer to expand capacity, right, so that I can focus more on passing our church, right, and train folks to continue to expand and build this work. And so that's a huge way that our white allies can, one, take responsibility for doing their own work around education, but two, receive a call to action and say, yeah, there are ways that I can get engaged. We actually, I just got a call last week from a church called All Souls Church, Unitarian Church here in DC, up in Ward 1. They have 70 new volunteers that are interested in getting engaged in this work. And they're serious about the work of education, but they're also serious about doing the work of advocacy, right? And so those are some of the lanes, making sure material needs are met, helping with fundraising, helping to around policy. Our partners at Mom Demand Action and at Brady and Team Enough, they've been phenomenal around really helping to magnify our policy voice at the council and on the Hill and those sorts of things. And so those are some of the areas and ways that our allies can really show up. Training in anti-racism from a biblical worldview, obviously as a pastor, meeting the material and felt needs and really working around policy. That's
really, really helpful. And I'm going to try to combine a couple of questions for you now. So This is one comment and question and then another question. So thank you, Reverend Gholston. Your work is very inspiring. What have been some of the biggest challenges you've experienced, whether personally, on the job, or professionally? And then the next question, which is similar. Even before these challenging times, I imagine people turn to their pastors with problems in their life. How do you keep from letting the next tragedy break you so you can be there for others?
Oh, wow. I'm going to take the last one because I think it's very important. So for me, one of the most important things that I try to maintain is practicing silence, practicing the presence of the Holy Spirit. I take regular silent retreats. I take days off every week. In fact, today is my day off. I made an exception for y'all because it was in the evening. So I spent the morning with my family to make a little bit of space this evening for this hour. But if I don't do those things, if I don't pray, if I don't meditate, if I don't regularly practice the presence of God, then I'm no good. I'm no good in this work. If I don't go to my therapist twice a month, I'm no good in this work. If I don't maintain a regular rhythm of going running 2 to 3 times a week, then I'm no good in this work. If I don't have peer pastors that I can go to who I know are going through and have been through the same things I've been through that I can really commiserate with, then I'm not no good in this work. If I don't reach out to Reverend Lawson or to my pastor Bobby Hicks or to my pastor Reverend Dr. Lethea Smith Withers or to my pastor Kevin Ha, the folks who are farther along than me in terms of age and wisdom, if I don't reach out to them, then I'm no good in this work. If I don't reach back to the 25 and 26 and 27-year-olds who are coming behind me, then I'm no good in this work. And so those are some of the practices that I try to maintain that keep me grounded. As far as the challenges, the biggest challenge in this work is the sheer magnitude of the problem. White supremacy is so thoroughly entrenched in every aspect of our culture that there are moments where you can feel like, Lord, as soon as I pulled this one thread right here, I done unravel something else. I didn't even know it was there. And so, so I think one of the things that encourages me, and I think it's, I'm trying to remember who said it. I think it might've been Mother Teresa, I think maybe who said it, who said, always honor the slow work of God. And so I'm always struck in this tension because I want something to be done now. And so I organize and I push. But in terms of what keeps me grounded, Bishop Oscar Romero in El Salvador, he put it like this. He said that we are always building and planting the seeds of a kingdom that we may not be present to see fully imagined, right? Or to see fully blossomed. And so I know that that's part of my work as well. Part of what I'm doing is I'm harvesting the seeds of what the folks behind me have planted. I've called some of those names already tonight. But also part of my work is to also plant and also water and tend seeds that I know that the folks coming after me are also going to tend and harvest. So that is a challenge, but that's how I stay sane, I guess, in the midst of it all.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us tonight. I didn't know this was your day off, but we appreciate it. But is there, do you want to take one more question? Is that okay?
Sure, I don't mind.
Okay. So you talk about humanizing those that inflict violence and those that are victims and are activists. And you also touched on this, Pastor Jelante, a little bit earlier. But how does our country begin to heal? What will it take?
I feel like I answered that question.
Fair enough. I think you did too. And the other one I think you also touched on as well, but I'll just mention it. If you want to add anything on, feel free to. But you've mentioned loved ones like your nephew and father being victims of violence. Were there ever moments where your faith was tested and you wanted to give up? And how did you overcome those feelings?
Yeah, all the time. I always struggle, and I'm pretty honest with folks about, my sort of valleys of the soul, if you will, or the challenges that I have. And I don't know what I would do without Christ. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have, if the God that I worshiped did not also endure suffering, shame, crucifixion by an empire that knew that they could kill him and destroy him, but overcome it with the power of love and with the power of forgiveness and with the power of liberation. I don't know what I would do. I take great consolation in knowing that God is not some far off figure removed from suffering, but that at least the God in the Bible is a God that is rooted and grounded in suffering, taking suffering in God's own body. And for that reason, always empathizes with anybody else when they're going through suffering. And the power of that love was enough to defeat death and to defeat an empire. And that's amazing to me, that love has that kind of power, that is willing to bear pain, bear agony, but that love is strong enough so that even death doesn't have the final say. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm fearless in the work I do, is because I can't worry about my life in that sense. I don't have a martyr complex, but I can't worry so much to the extent that it keeps me from doing from what I'm called to do, entering into the pain, my own pain, and healing from that, but sharing in the pain of my city, and not just being so stuck on being in a pulpit on a Sunday or on a Zoom now that I can't share in that pain, and then we get to walk together beyond death. We get to walk together beyond the pain into hope, into change, into transformation. I believe that. I wouldn't keep going if I didn't believe that. And so that's what gives me hope, because trust me, I'm regularly getting calls from my comrades and allies in this work who are struggling, really struggling with hope, because we'll never be able to do enough and feel like we've done enough. We can do what we can do, and we have to do that with all of our might, with all of our strength, with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our soul. But then there's just a part that we have to give the rest of it over into a mystery. A lot of this, the work that ends up being done, I can't claim credit for any, all I can say is that by some miracle, families call our church and they receive help. By some miracle, families, when they're going through, are able to get connected to resources. By some miracle, families who had kids who were vulnerable for shooting are getting put in programs and are now getting jobs. These are miracles. There's no program. I mean, there are little things you can try to put in place, but for it to actually be effective, that's the work of God right there. That's the work of God right there. So I'm grateful and I'm hopeful, because it's been almost 3 years since I moved back to DC from LA, and really 2 years in this work here in DC, and about 7 years altogether of organizing around both state violence and now intercommunity violence. But anything that we've done, if we've done it well, it's always been a miracle. It's always been a mystery. It's always been a holy, sacred work that only God can take credit for.
Thank you so much, Pastor Delonte. You've given me, and I think a lot of people here, a lot of hope tonight and inspiration. And just thank you. Your courage and resilience is remarkable, and it's a call to all of us to do our part. So it's been great. I hope you know Peace Direct, is here. We do have now our Washington office is looking more and more at what we can do here in the U.S. and in our own local community. So, we're want to be a peace partner for you, want to support you, get to know your community, see what we can do together and how we can be part of this work together more. So thanks for being here. I know we're over time, so I just want to turn it back. Do you have any last thing you want to say before I turn it back to John to close us out?
No, I've said enough tonight. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, John, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Delonte, for being with us tonight and holding up to a mirror to a lot of us. It was artists and pastors hold up a mirror to humanity, and thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And Christine, I'll just ask, can you pull up the last slide? There we go. Thank you so much. So Peace Direct continues to carry out its work of supporting local peace builders in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic and divisiveness in the US. The heroic peace builders we support are all doing their best to continue to carry out their important work. So just ask you to be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and sign up to receive our emails about future events, going to our website, www.peacedirect.org. And for more information around Peace Fellowship Church, along with Eden Workshop and Plus Peace, please see below. We're so grateful that you joined us tonight. Really appreciate it. Once again, Pastor Jelante, thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you soon. All the best.
Peace, y'all.